Hi everyone, and welcome to Watercolors with Jaylene. And today's tutorial is just going to be a fun little floral painting. This one I have mounted on a solid background paper because I'll be making a greeting card out of it. But this will be what we're going to work on today. And before we get started, I would like to ask you to like and subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't done so already. And that way you'll get notifications when I have new tutorials coming out, or once they're out, you'll get notified. So to get started, I'll go over real quick just the materials list. We'll have a piece of watercolor paper, some fresh water, a paper towel, and my Winsor & Newton watercolor set. I have two brushes. One is a round number 6, the other is a round number 8. And I'm actually going to be starting with the number 6. I don't know if I'll use the 8 or not, but I have it here just in case. And I would say really any size brush that you're comfortable with, go ahead and use that. I do like to use the round one because with the point, I can do some fine detail work. And as far as colors for the flowers themselves, my purplish color is actually called Purple Lake. And then for my blue flowers, I'm going to be using the cerulean blue. And then for the greenery, it's just going to be the basic hooker's green. So, and then for the little centers, I'll be using the cadmium yellow. So I'm really not mixing up any special colors. I'm using them right out of the palette. And like I said, you can use any colors that you want. You know, the blue, using blues as the main flowers is really nice. But if you like, you know, your oranges and rose colors or yellow or reds, that would be great too. So I'll set that aside and get my little piece of watercolor paper out here. So, so to get started on this, let me just review something real quick for you. So for each of the petals, which I have 5 petals on the main flower, and then there's the 2 blue flowers that are kind of tucked back behind it. So for the main flower, I do have 5 petals. And when I'm painting these, I'm going to be kind of making the edges a little wispy, at real light and wispy. So I'm going to start with, as I had mentioned, my Purple Lake. And I am going to be doing fairly light on the flower itself. Let me move these out. And so I start in the middle, and then I don't want quite that light. Okay, so I start in the middle, and I just kind of bring it up a little bit. Okay, and then we want to, as I mentioned, work on 5 of these. And see how when I get to the outer edge, I do it kind of wispy. Just to make it look like a nice, loose flower. Okay, so... And I think the important thing with this is to make sure that there's 5 petals. As I've mentioned in other videos, I always like doing an odd number, and I think it's probably from years ago, doing like flower decorating, you know, it's always good to use 5 flowers instead of an even number. And so you can see these are not perfect, you know, not all the same size. I want to put in a couple quick little wisps around the edges. Okay, so there we go. And quite often with a lot of my paintings and my tutorials, I will talk about how it's, with watercolors, it's really important to do layering. So you can see that we do have the light color down, and then there's darker layers, which will be kind of giving the depth of the flower and a little bit of character. So we do want to make sure that this first layer is nice and dry before we start adding on the other layers. So while I'm letting that dry a little bit, I am going to work on a blue flower and tuck that in down here, and then another one over here. And then we can go back and do the detail work on the purple, and then we'll go to the blue, so on and so forth. So let's get a little bit of paint here, and and then because this one is tucked behind, obviously there won't be the full 5 leaves. I'll be putting 3, or petals, I'll be putting 3 here, and then 2.5 to 3 over here. We'll see how it works out. And it's all pretty loosey-goosey. You don't have to be, you know, exactly as this. You can shake it up a bit if you want. So for this one, I'm creating just the three petals coming out, and the paint on my brush is pretty light, you know, so that we can go through and add the darker layers once this dries a little bit. And so with just with the tip of my brush, I want to add in a few little wisps around here, and then we're going to do the same over here. And this one is kind of tucked back behind there also. So here is one of the petals coming out. And on this one I will have just about 3 full ones. And then again, I like to put in the little wisps. It kind of adds a little bit of character and whimsy to the flowers. So I have the 3 basic flowers now, so I think the purple is dry enough that we can go back and start adding some of the, you know, just the depth, the character. And for this, it's going to be that same purple lake color, and I just have a little more paint on my brush than I did for the first layer. So with this layer, I'm going to want to use just the very tip of my brush. That's why these round brushes are so important for this type of a painting. And I'm just very lightly, you know, touching it, and I want to do a little bit maybe up on the edges. And what I'm doing is kind of going up the side of the petal to give it a little bit of definition. And so on this one, let me get just a little more paint on here. Okay, see how I'm just kind of very lightly doing some light strokes. And as I mentioned, this is just with a little more paint on the brush. And you don't have to be real perfect with it, you know, just kind of tuck some of these little, you know, the darker area towards the center, because it does kind of give it a little bit of depth and definition. I think I've said that about 4 times, right? Okay, so, and it doesn't take a lot, you know, just a few. Okay, so there is the purplish flower. Now these other 2 blue ones, they are definitely dry enough at this point. So I'm going to go back in with the cerulean blue. And there again, I just have a little more paint on my brush, a little heavier. And with the point of the tip of the brush, we go in and make some of the wispy strokes, you know, and up around the edge. Okay, so we do this. You know, there's all types of fun tutorials. I do a lot with florals, and I know the holidays are going to be fast approaching, so watch for videos that I'm going to be putting out with, I'm going to start out with Halloween, but I want to, within the next week or so, throw in maybe a Christmas design. So that way, if you want to get started on Christmas cards or something, you know, even little gifts for Christmas, then I'm putting ideas out early enough so you have time to work on it, because you know how these holidays are. They sneak up on you and they're here before you even realize it. So now is a good time to get started. Now that the seasons are starting to change and getting cooler, I know some areas are having a lot of rain. So it's a good time to get started on some of your holiday projects. All right, and you can see I'm just adding just a few little lines here, just with the tip of my brush. I'm going up around there. Okay. All right, so I think that's pretty well completed for now. And at this point, I think I'm gonna just dab in my yellow in the middle. And for this yellow, I'm using the cadmium yellow. It's not quite as bright as like a lemon yellow. It's more of a kind of a orangish or burnt, almost like a burnt umber / yellowish color, but it's bright enough for something like this. And so there again, I'm just taking the tip of my brush and dotting it in. And I wanted to wait until the flower was pretty dry. On some of the designs, I do like to, as I'm putting in the centers, the stems and stems in the center, you know, so that it can flow out into the leaves. But for this particular one and the colors that I'm using, I didn't want it to you know, flow with the color of the flowers. I definitely wanted the strong definition of it. So I just kind of dabbed in some of the yellow, and there is a little bit of white space still hanging out here and there. You know, for that, we don't want to fill it in 100%. So actually now for the leaves, I do want to switch to my number 8 round, just because the belly of the brush itself is a little longer and not quite as plump, you can see. And so I think it's going to work a little bit better for me with the leaves that I'm going to be putting in. And so as I had mentioned earlier, I'll be using the hooker's green for the leaves and to put in some wispy little greenery sticking out. And and then I think I had mentioned at the beginning of my video, if you haven't already liked and subscribed to my channel, if you could go ahead and do that, I would really appreciate it. Okay, so we can just add in some leaves here and there, and everyone has their own way of, you know, their favorite way of making leaves. For this one, they're kind of just a very basic leaf, really. Nothing too plump, you know. I like to put a couple, like 3. And obviously some larger than others, some lighter, some darker. Just a couple smaller ones sticking out down here. And then over in this area, and I turn my my project, you know, turn the paper. I want to make sure that I am not getting my hand in the way so that you can see exactly what I am doing. Okay, so here we've got just 3. Now I'm going to go through and start adding in a few wisps here and there. You know, to make it look like they're coming out from behind the flowers. I can add a little bit of a stem, you know, going up on these leaves. And if you don't add the stems and just leave them kind of hanging out, that's okay too. It's just fun. You know, it's a fun little design. And as I had mentioned, I use these excuse me, I will make a greeting card out of this, and it'll just be a very general greeting card saying hello, thinking of you. They can be used for all purposes. All right, so let's put a couple over here, and then even a couple sticking out from here. With this particular design, I do like to have a lot of the leafy wisps poking out, because everything about this is pretty wispy. You know, the leaves themselves, or the petals. And then I'm just going to put a couple over here. Okay, so that really is about it. And now one thing that I did on here, and you can see there's a very light green, kind of like a background green. Many times I will put a very light background in prior to starting the painting, but on this one I did do it after. I just kind of wanted to soften the edges of it. So I'm going to give this a minute or two to dry. There again, all of the green has to be very dry before I get started on it. And so once it dries really well, then I'm just going to take some of the, probably for this I'll use an emerald green, something a little bit lighter and with a lot of water, very little color. In fact, I'm going to do it now. And you can see there will be very, very little paint actually on the brush. And I want even less than that. And then keep in mind, as watercolor paint dries, it does lighten up. Okay, and let's get a little more paint on here. A little more water, I should say. And then just go around, you know, and in areas where it may even pull a little bit of the color from the, like from these leaves, that's okay. You know, it'll soften the edges is what will happen. And that works well. It's something that you might want to just kind of play with, you know, on a piece of practice paper. And you can see it's, you know, it's kind of muting a little bit of the green down through here. And that's what we want. Even if it pulls a little bit of the blue out, that's okay too. So there, that actually is the end of it there. It's completed. You can see I put just a little bit more of the greenery on this one, and I think I like that a little bit better. And I made the highlights with the purple and the blue a little more prominent in this one than I did that one. So no two will ever be the same. They still both look really nice. And there again, I will be making a card out of this. So that is really, that's it for this one. Now, I do also have a Patreon page, and I have a lot of patterns over on my Patreon page for different projects and paintings that I've done on my channel. So if there's anything that you have seen on my channel and you don't know how to draw it or don't want to draw it, head on over to my Patreon page. For a couple bucks a month, you can download the patterns. There's also instruction pages on there. There's coloring pages if you have kids. That's always a lot of fun. There are adult coloring pages also. And any of the coloring pages, you can do watercolor painting with those as well. So it's just, you know, some fun options over there. If you could just hit the like button, I would really appreciate it. If you have any comments or questions, leave them below. I do get back to everyone I respond to everyone. I appreciate your time today, and I look forward to working with you soon. Have a great day.